In week 9, Orlando defeated Paul by a final score of 148-93. That 148 was the highest point total of the season. Orlando is also the owner of the worst playoff performance, and he managed to take that record this week by scoring 45 points against Paul in round 1 of the playoffs. Paul has a record of his own. In 2014, in round 1, when he faced Orlando, he put up the highest point total in playoff history by defeating Orlando 95-148. This is your round 1 recap. And we're going to get to Orlando in a second. Before I get to Orlando, I just want to add, by the way, that before his 45-point performance, the owner of that record was Bundy in 2014 when I put up a measly 49 points. It hurts me to say it, but it is very, very true. What happened to Turtle Power this week? The hottest team going into the playoffs with 5 victories, read them, 148 week 9, 113 week 10, week 11, 109, week 12, 107, week 13, 109, and now this. An injury to Dante Moncrief, the feminine product guy. An injury to Melvin Gordon, who I guess I must have jinxed too, because after giving Orlando praise for drafting him, the guy gets 3 carries, 5 yards. I'm not sure what injury happened to him, but he is no longer functional. His dick doesn't work anymore. And Dante Moncrief just didn't do anything. Also getting no points from Dan Bailey, a 4-point performance from Russell Wilson, his worst performance of the season, and also one of the weakest performances of the season from David Johnson with a 12. It's not exactly like Paul, killed him. I mean, Paul got a 2 from Ben Roethlisberger. He got a 4 from Mike Evans, who before this week was the number 1 wide receiver and has now been dropped down to 2. But nonetheless, 84-45. Put it in the books. Turtle Power is eliminated. And so is Ewok Rape. Listen, I honestly thought that these two guys were going to be the final in this fantasy season, not to say that every season I were to look at the papers and think that automatically the hottest team and the highest scoring team are going to make it in there. It's just when you looked at the numbers and on paper, they look to be the better teams. And I guess you can never predict that. And as Hensel likes to say, Walter Mercado was wrong again, but he won't be wrong for long. You understand me? Hensel defeated Ewok Rape 132-95. There's really no reason to go into Eric's point totals because, look, you face somebody who scores 132 points and who one of his players puts up a 47. You're not going to beat him that week. Which, by the way, also digging into the papers, in 2013, the highest playoff point total by any player was accomplished by Jamal Charles, who put up a 51. And Jamal Charles was then owned by Bundy. That was against Pedro. I'll never forget that game. It was I believe it was round 2 of the playoffs. It was a snow day, and Jamal Charles was just running everywhere. So before Hensel starts, sticking out his chest like Le'Veon Bell's really something to really brag about, with his 47 points, 51. Still got 4 more points to go, buddy. Okay. So this is going to be a very short recap, and for some reason my voice feels like it's hoarse. I hope I'm not getting sick. Aren't you guys so concerned for me? This isn't going to be a very long recap because, obviously we're down to the final 4 teams. We are down to Ed with a record of 10-3, going up against Paul with a record of 7-6. Ed, of course, the number 1 ranked team, and Paul, the number 5 ranked team. Ed has 13 waiver pickups. I guess that's not even worth mentioning. And Paul has 24, which is barely worth mentioning because I guess you could assume if Paul makes it to next week, there's just no way he's going to need 7 pickups. It's not going to be an issue this year, as I said just a few weeks ago. And then we also have Hensel, ranked 6 with a record of 6-6-1. Andy ranked 2nd with a record of 8-4-1. You will remember that they were the 2 fags that got they got tongue-tied with each other. They were making out with each other, and their tongues just pretzeled up. Because when you tie with a man, you end up kissing for all eternity. And as I said, since Andy has pretty much tied every year, there you go. There you go. Hensel has 17 waiver pickups, and Andy has the highest amount of waiver pickups with 26. A little paper history now. Hensel becomes the second 6th ranked team to make it to the second round. It's honestly, it just doesn't happen. The lowest ranked team just never seems to advance, but Hensel is the second in history to do so. Andy did it in 2013 when he eventually lost to, I believe, Jay in the second round. I just want to add, too, that the purpose of reading those rankings of Paul and Hensel, there's a reason for that. Because, surprisingly, what has also never happened is a 6th or 5th ranked team they've never made the championship. The highest ranking ever to make the championship is a 4th ranking. I believe I did it twice, and Jay did it 1 time. So that's interesting to note moving forward. What I'm going to do is I'm going to take a look at these matchups a little differently than I've looked at them in weeks past, if this feature was even provided before the playoffs. I'm going to take a look at the preview section in the scoreboard, and this is basically what's going to compare each individual position and to figure out who's the stronger team position by position. Now, as we all know, each team has 9 slots consisting of a quarterback, consisting of 2 running back positions, 1 flex spot, 2 wide receivers, 1 tight end, 1 defense, and 1 kicker. If we take a look at Ed versus Paul, Paul has the advantage 6 slots to 3. Ed having the advantage in the quarterback position with Drew Brees, Paul having the advantage with Lamar Miller and LeGarrette Blount. Ed's team has no running game. I've said this for the last month or so. He's very fortunate that he got A.J. Green back, which I didn't think was going to happen. A.J. Green is Ed's second check compared to Devontae Adams for Paul. Paul then gets the very next 2 checks with Mike Adams and T.Y. Hilton compared to Ed's Dez Bryant and Amari Cooper. Ed gets a check for Jordan Reed, though, I'll say that, Paul's got the number 1 ranked tight end in Travis Kelce, and that can obviously sway. And to finish it up, Paul has the advantage with his defense and with the kickers don't even, they don't even deserve that. I know I said there were people last week, but, I was only kidding. So needless to say that Paul, when it comes to the papers, has the advantage, and I would say that Paul has the advantage in this matchup. Ed is the champion, and Ed is the champion until somebody changes that. And I think that will change this week because of Ed's ground game. There's just nothing there, and unless he can get crazy performances like Hensel got a fucking crazy performance against Eric. I don't think it's going to happen, and I do think we will have a new champion for this season. I know, Ed likes to have this whole narrative of, it's everybody against me, this fucking righteous indignation. I get it, Ed. It's okay, but it's gonna be okay. If I could predict all you guys to be the victors, I would do that, but unfortunately, I can't. So if we take a look at the matchup between Hensel and Andy, it's also split at 6-3 in Andy's advantage. with Kirk Cousins being greater than Andrew Luck. Le'Veon Bell, of course, is going to get the upper hand against anybody with the last week that he had up against Andy's Devontae Freeman. Then we've got Jordan Howard for Andy. A check for Jay Ajayi versus Isaiah Crowell. And then 4 consecutive checks for Andy in the wide receiver, tight end, and defensive department with Odell Beckham Jr., Deshaun Jackson, Delaney Walker, and the Ravens defense. And Hensel gets the check for the... So, needless to say that once again, it's not just that I'm looking at the papers. It's just better teams overall. And history would suggest, I guess, in this matchup, I'm going with history, that the 6th ranked team has never made it. Obviously, I believe that Paul is going to change that highest ranking number from 4 to 5 when he defeats Ed this week, but I don't think Hensel is going to be able to manage it. So there you go. Those are my predictions for the round 2 playoffs. And, this would pretty much suggest that we've got ourselves a cop bowl. We had the Brother Bowl just several years ago when Orlando defeated Joe. And I believe that this year we're going to have the Cop Bowl. I also want to add that with this talk that we've been having about belts, I'm of the opinion that the belt would probably be cooler if it was one belt every season. If it was one belt every season, which I know would be a little tougher because, the process of whoever wins the championship next season and then we'd have to, order a plaque or something extra to then, to put the newest name on that particular belt. I know there's a little bit of work that goes into it, and then there's the upkeep of the belt, which I think is even better. I think there's a bit of, it gives it a sense of history if 5 years from now, when I've got like 2 to 3 more names, 2 to 3, of my name, whatever the fuck my name is going to be on the belt, because it's going to fucking happen. You guys fucking know it, because it mostly always happens. When that happens, I think it's cool to have a belt that looks a little dingy, looks a little rusty. I think it adds to the story and it's more fun as opposed to the other option, which I do think is cool as well, is belts every season. And Dro had the good idea of that would be the buy-in for every season. That's also a good idea. I'm on board with both, but I prefer I'm sorry to say this, the Stanley Cup-esque idea for an award in this league. Though I do see the idea of maybe just having a belt and you've won 2 to 3 championships. Well, you've got 2 to 3 belts, and then it's a trophy. It's a trophy wall for you, and that's cool too. But I would side with the one belt for the whole entire league. I'll try to take care of it every year. I'll put it up somewhere. I'll hang it up, if it makes you guys feel any better, even though you guys won't even get to touch it. But this was your round 1 recap. My voice is a little hoarse. Looks like I'm going to have to break up some Dayquil and some Ricola. But as always, may your quarterbacks get hurt before they leave the locker room. May your running backs pull their hamstrings, and may your wide receivers get arrested for marijuana possession. Go fuck yourselves, and good luck.